Beardy and the Beast, the second wall.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. This is placeholder intro song.
Welcome to the second wall, binge-free zone where we look at a series and discuss it in small chunks. This time we are looking at Joss Whedon's sci-fi classic, Firefly. We can be found on most podcast and social media platforms, a full list of which can be found at beardyandthebeast.com. Please watch the episode and then join Drew and I in the mess as we explore the verse.
Hey, Devin.
Drew?
Tell me more good stuff about me.
Oh, those eyes. They're so dreamy.
Facts.
But you know, I don't really get to talk to too many other guys. They're all either married or my sister.
Can confirm.
Oh, Simon. You're trying so hard. And
Dude,
you just don't get it.
Honestly, I think that scene was actually quite well written.
Mm.
Because like it was actually coming off as inadvertently smooth.
Yeah.
Like, and then hard 180 when he started overthinking it.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I don't think like it was sincere.
Mhm.
Like I honestly, him saying that didn't come across as something that was meant to be a slight or a neg type situation. It was literally, I'm an awkward nerd who doesn't talk to people. So I don't quite realize what I've said. Which is funny because he can sound so well spoken, but we've seen him do things like that before. It's like I don't think there's malice there. I just think he doesn't understand.
Well, that's why Zoe's statement was very poignant.
Yeah.
Is there someone you are good talking with?
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, burn.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like we see at the end, like I think Kaylee recognizes that. I mean, we do see it at the end. It's like she does grab his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not, and I mean, if Kaylee didn't understand that, she would have given up on Simon a long time ago. Because there's always something dummy says in their conversations when they're smitting.
Well, and that's the thing. That is part of their relationship dynamic, right?
Yeah.
I honestly think the friction kind of has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to like formally get together and get married, I'm sure they would just continue having those type of friction moments because that's just who they are as people, and like those clashes are actually part of the endearment, right?
Yeah. I find it interesting. So like let's just kind of go into the mirroring aspect that kind of shows up here. So we've already pointed out, it's like, you know, who else are they going to hook up with?
Yeah.
Like this is something us as viewers have pointed out is a thing. And but when man, I can't even remember his name. When the other guy, when the private was there, it's like she almost seemed like she could have been smitten with him as well. But it's hard to say. Is that the character of Kaylee just being like that, or was it, hey, look, here's someone who could possibly be interested in, or something like that? It's hard to tell. I just know it came across to me as that little bit of almost hypocritical. It's like, well, here's someone that I can, that, you know, isn't married or my captain.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what they were kind of trying to express with the newcomer, freaking Tracy.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what they were trying to imply, but that's not how I read it based on her like physical motions and her glances.
Yeah.
No, I might be like way out in left field. I'm just going to tell you how I read it. It wasn't so much that she was interested in him as a person. So we saw in the one scene where she was just repeatedly listening to that message,
Yeah.
and we know that Kaylee is an emotional person
Hmm.
with everything. Like even when it comes down to communication with Serenity,
Yeah.
I think she felt emotionally connected to this person that she built up in her mind
Mm.
as to who Tracy was based
Mm.
on, a minute long message or whatever. But the glances that she's was making when they were in the bunk
Yeah.
seemed to be more. It seemed more arm's length. Like the way that she was looking around seemed almost to me like she was about to bust out a like "you'd make a good friend" statement.
Yeah, it came across to me as like the possibility of testing the waters.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's just because these aren't interactions we get to see very often with Kaylee, and I think this is where
Mm,
these are things that would probably expand more. I do want to lean towards this is just who she is as a person.
yeah, I agree.
Like she's just that friendly, bubbly. It's just the placing of it in this episode with that just made it feel a bit odd.
Made it feel like they were trying to imply that there was attraction.
Yeah.
Well, I,
Um,
to back up what you're saying, um, she is an affectionate person at heart who uses affectionate language,
mhm,
even to strangers. We could see that with Shepherd Book in the first episode.
yeah.
Um, but there's also this awkward interaction. You're now in closed spaces with someone that you don't know except for the built-up person in your head.
Yeah.
So if you separate it from uh, the thought of they actually know something about each other at all,
Mhm.
um, it really does come off with as what you said. This
Yeah.
is who Kaylee is as a person. Yeah.
I did read her listening to that message on repeat slightly differently.
Okay.
Um, so and this was just a passing thought. Like it's hard to say for certain.
Hmm.
But so in Tracy's message, he's talking about how he's basically just in too deep with the wrong type of crowd
Hmm.
and such like that. So it entered my mind for a second. It's like I wonder if Kaylee is almost internalizing that
Hmm.
because she hasn't seen much. Like really, she hasn't seen the most in the way of death and such like that, and well, the wrong side. I mean, there was the Niska thing, but
Yeah.
like outside of Niska, like she hasn't really had that. So it almost entered my mind. It's like, is she listening to this on repeat because is this something she's going to consider? Is she putting herself in that type of danger?
Hmm.
Right? It didn't get played on quite enough, but it definitely entered my mind because I'm trying to think. Is like I can't really see a reason for her to be listening to that, and it's the first time that I guess she would have seen someone that we know that someone's dead where it wasn't a direct confrontation. This was just a consequence of previous things
Yeah.
as opposed to so because again, this is very much not her world.
Well, I have
So
three, I guess technically two things. One, I think it would have been great if they explored that.
mhm,
I would have found that really interesting. Um, but just kind of your explanation makes me think of it more of a. Was it more of an empathic response of her trying to understand the history and a connection and emotion of the people she cares about, Mal and Zoe?
mm,
Was that what they were trying to illustrate?
it could be. I think like it's one of these things where I understand why they didn't explore it here.
Mhm.
That this felt very much like it. I could see this being a seed for some further, later plot development.
Yeah.
I mean, because we see that in a lot of TV shows. It's like, yeah, there's some seed there, and it's like, okay, well, am I really fit for the group? And in the long run, try to leave and then realize that, oh no, it was the wrong thing and they should have been there the entire time. And
Oh, I mean, we also have future villain introductions,
yes.
future antagonist introductions. So um, that's part of probably what was going on here.
Mhm.
I overall the Kaylee stuff, I felt like it wasn't aside for showing like the actual kind of budding romance and connection between Simon and Kaylee. Um, her involvement otherwise was very vague, and I didn't think it was impactful. No, impactful is not the right word, but I didn't think it was necessarily important to the story of the episode.
Um, it wasn't important to the story of the episode. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm just going to get this out of the way now. This episode was terrible.
Really, I thought it was good.
I, this episode to me felt like the epitome of a filler episode.
Wow.
Like it, and I mean, okay. So I think some of this is going to be tainted from, being familiar with the series.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, well, we learned a little bit more about Zoe and Mal, but we didn't really, because it was just their characters still being the same thing, just in the past, right?
Mm.
We see Zoe being the stoic, we see Mal being the guns ablazing. Like it's there's no development around their character there. It's a character that was introduced that didn't seem to have anything, and unfortunately, I know that these possible villains aren't. I didn't see a thread with these villains like I do with like the
Like
the blue
Niska,
hand,
or
like
yeah, Blue
Niska,
Hand.
Badger, the blue hands, right? This felt very much like a villain of the week type
Mm.
thing. I don't expect to see them again. Um, unless they were going to do something with Book around it, because they're again clearly Book is showing his thing. So for me, while I'm watching the episode, the only real thing got out of it was that kind of character from Kaylee. It was the biggest part of the overall story moving forward was seeing some of that character development and that confusion around her.
Which I guess, and I'm not going to actually counter. I might try to change your perspective a little bit, but not
Yeah.
reverse it. And I guess you could see this episode as being bad, especially as I expressed, the Kaylee stuff was quite vague.
Mhm.
So it wasn't as intricate or front and center as it could have been to make the episode quote unquote good, because of lack of purpose. So what I'm thinking, opposed to just being bad, I'm thinking missed opportunity.
Okay, that's
Um,
fair.
to they've made suggestions about Mel and Zoe in the war,
Mhm.
but they spent so little time showing it
Yeah.
and expressing it that that's what the focal point should have been.
Mhm.
So if we were to compare this to the earlier episodes, so there's always the mere tangents and like parallel storylines, right?
Yeah.
So what you would end up having is the parallel storylines of combat in the war alongside what's going on in the relationship between Simon and Kaylee,
Yeah.
and then alongside, I guess, the villain of the week and the entire crew.
Yeah.
So you would have those three parallel stories, but it didn't do that.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe even not missed opportunity. Like I think you've convinced me. I actually really like this episode, but I think all the storylines are vague.
Mhm.
I think this is just an emotional episode. Is all.
Yeah, there's definitely some of the emotions there. Yeah, just didn't, and this is why I say it feels kind of fillery because
Mm-hmm.
there was nothing really learned. There was a little bit of character motivation and emotion kind of played with, but just nothing really stuck.
That's
Like,
because everything that was expressed in this episode had already been expressed multiple times before.
yeah, and that's exactly it. And I think that's why it's like I'm watching. It's like the two most important things were, getting to see a little bit more Kaylee reacting with people outside of the crew
Yep.
in one way or another, and Jane's awesome hat. Like, and it's hard because like we've watched these and we've known. We're generally like, oh yeah, no, we know what's happening in the episodes. Like, I completely forgot about this episode. Like, just didn't
I
even enter my mind. It's just like it's the episode where Jane gets his hat.
this is I've been subtly whenever we talk about Jane's story arc, I've been subtly making reference to this episode.
Yeah.
Because here we can actually see some of the true motivations of Jane
Mhm.
and who he is as a person.
Yeah.
And while you were going full little hours on this episode, I was you made me realize something here. So the story of Kyle and his endearing mother's boy hat.
Yeah.
So Jane, right? I was surprised the crew wasn't more shocked by this endearing letter that he was reading out.
Mm.
And the fact that he's sending credits back home to his family is the only real motivation that we've had for his profit, like his desire for profits in coin, right?
Yeah.
Like little Maddie's still sick with the damp lung. Like, thanks for the credits. I made you this thing. He's obviously cherishing it. And given the type of person that Jane is, I'm making an assumption here. But while you were kind of talking, I was thinking about this moment, and it makes me realize that this person, Kyle, the endearing mother's boy, and I keep calling that because the postmaster called him Kyle.
Yeah.
This is the quality of character that Mal probably saw in him
Yes.
to keep him around.
Yeah. I agree with that completely. And so I guess I did kind of gloss over that because there was a lot with Jane there. It was nice because it just confirms all of the stuff that we've been seeing in it, all of the subtle moments that show how he actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Like clearly he does actually care about loyalty. He does care about his family, right? Be that his sister and his mom. I'm assuming it's his sister.
I mean,
Or
I don't know if they. I mean,
I don't
Maddie
remember
could be a guy's name.
Yeah. Or the family that he's adopted with the crew.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, we see that with his struggle. Like again, there was a struggle when he turned in the Tams, but he had clear motivation for it. This has to be what Mal sees.
Well, and that further expresses that when he was in the airlock, that moment where he's like, "Don't tell him what I did."
Yeah,
is like would be in character. Like he knows the betrayal because it is family that he betrayed, right?
Yeah.
And it shows here that he has value of family.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like, honestly, this is Jane's probably the first character that they've been able to fully express at this episode.
Yes. Yeah, this was the culmination of all the small things. And it's nice because they didn't have to make a big thing of they didn't make a big thing of it. And like as you said, the crew clearly knows that this is what Jane is like because they didn't make fun of him for the hat. And they didn't need to make a big deal of it. Like the big things I saw with is like, oh, Jane don't read too well. That's fine. But going back to the idea of the respect and him understanding that, there was one edit in the episode that actually really bothered me.
Is it where he took off the hat and put it back on? Because of
I don't think he put it back on. I think it just showed him having it back on in another
Yeah, it was a bad
scene.
cut.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm
because
glad that
yeah, he took the hat off because he was honoring the
showing
dead.
respect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
showing respect. And then it did a pan shot, and he had the hat back on.
Yeah. Oh, it stood out like a sore thumb. And it's like, oh, I understand exactly what happened here.
And you know why you were looking for the hat?
Hmm.
Because nothing else in that scene was all that interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, it would have been. It's an interesting character moment.
hmm.
I think. I think with that, with those scenes there, I think the other thing that shows up is again, kind of going back to River's hyper awareness slash possible space magic powers. Because I think she went and laid on the coffin because she knew he wasn't dead.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I bet you, because I'm still operating on the theory she's hyper aware.
Mhm.
I bet you she could see him breathing.
So here's the interesting thing about that, because I'm pretty sure he used the same drug that the Tams used in Ariel.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was the same drug. So we know that there's drugs that fools everything to make you think you're dead. So it fools the machines and all of that stuff. So was he breathing?
Could have been.
You would think Simon would have noticed that before he tried to cut into him.
It could also been like super hearing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. There's something there. It's just
I mean, it's sci-fi magic, right?
yeah.
For all we know, she's got a chip in her head, and it's a biochip, and that's why it doesn't pick up on sensors. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, there was another character moment that I really liked was I took it as companion grief counseling,
Mm.
the funny story drinking event,
Yes.
because Inara is not all that interested in the war stories. She's interested in the people.
Yeah.
Um, but she was reading Mel and Zoe's attitude and what they needed and accurately responding in kind.
Yeah.
So I think she was just being very nice, and I think it was because of her companion training that she was able to do it, because it was the right thing at the right time, right?
I think the companion training helps her be able to do that. But I mean, let's look at some of the roles that we've talked about with Anara beforehand. She's kind of the ship's mom,
Mm.
right? So, and obviously very tied to Mal. So the companion training helped, but I really think it's like, these are close friends, and sometimes you just go to a wake and you drink and listen to the funny stories,
Yeah.
right? Because that's how you deal with grief. I don't think that was. I don't think that was because she was a companion. I think that
No.
was because it was Anara, and her capacity to do that's probably what leads her to be a companion.
Yes.
Yeah,
Agreed.
just that.
Agreed.
Yeah, because it probably could have been Book as well. Like he could have done that, but I don't think. And now it would have been odd if it was Book, more because there's more history with Anara than there is with Book. So, and just more attachment with Anara, I guess.
For Book though, we've already always seen him as being fairly perceptive for certain things, intuitive. And there's been some suggestions,
Yeah.
but in this episode, in the final scene, Book was able to identify the markings. I think it was on the outfit of the guy, of our
Yeah.
villain of the week. Indicate what training and jurisdiction it was, and give a relative and probably accurate indication of how far away from his jurisdiction that he
Mhm.
might have been.
Yeah.
So you think, how does he know this?
Yes.
I'm like, before, you could be like, okay, he can fight because he was a scrappy youth or like a former gang member or um, criminal or an assassin or even a martial artist um, who turned a new leaf, became a shepherd.
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? But like, I mean, outside of an assassin, I don't see much indication of him being able to do that.
Mhm.
So there's got to be some type of military experience or interaction there.
Yeah. He definitely has high knowledge of the Alliance.
Mm.
And I mean, we throw this and compare and combine it with was it third or fourth episode where they actually go to an Alliance ship for help when he
Mm.
was shot, right? And it's like he's just instantly brought in. It's like he's something. It's clearly a mystery. Like I like the slow burn they're doing with the character because it always has me just kind of questioning. I hate the fact that I know within the because of the cancellation of the show, I'm not going to get an answer. Um, even though you mentioned there's some comics that I can look at afterwards.
Yeah,
um,
there's a very specific comic for the Shepherd that I suggest after people watch the show and the movie, they revisit the comic.
yeah.
But it tells Shepard's life in reverse
Mm,
from death to birth.
okay. Nice. I will have to, yeah. And that's the thing. Like you mentioned, it's like no, I'm just waiting because I don't want to taint everything that we've talked about with the show by
It's
knowing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I found it and I read it and I was like, afterwards I was like, dang it.
Yeah.
I should have waited on that. It's the reason why I didn't read the other ones that kind of interweave with the show.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, this episode in particular, with the context that would have been given in the comic, which I'm not going to give it any credit for because
Mhm.
those things should be expressed in the show because they didn't have a comic at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm wondering how much better this episode within context of the comic would be.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's very much a possibility. Um,
But I'm wondering, the reason why I brought up the Shepherd is one of the last signs. One of the things that Mal said. Um, in relation to the scene. So Tracy has the gun on everybody, and Tracy says, "Zori Mel, what are you doing with this Bible thumper?"
yeah.
Um, that's weird in context to Mel.
That really jumped out at me. I was actually going to bring up the same thing.
But then his response,
Mm.
and I'm probably just reading into it. Um, but he said, "I'll go to hell before,"
Mm.
and the fact that it was in relation to um, Tracy mentioning the shepherd in such a way.
Yeah.
Like, am I drawing a conclusion or is it just a regular turn of phrase? You know, what subtlety is there, right?
Yeah. So I think I slightly missed that because I got thrown off by Trace even saying, "What are you doing with this Bible thumper?"
Yeah.
Like that completely threw me off because we saw in Serenity, um, the episode Serenity, not the movie. Got to clarify that. Um, that Mel was religious,
Mhm.
or at the very least enough to be wearing a cross and basically giving a prayer beforehand. I have no reason to believe that Tracy wouldn't know that about him.
Mhm.
So that whole line just seemed way off, and yeah, I didn't understand where that came from because it just feels wrong. Though I guess I probably wouldn't have originally thought that because again, I forgot about him kissing that cross until we started doing this watch through again.
Mhm.
Um, so again, it's one of those things where watching casually, it's such a moment that's easy to miss that, yeah, okay, that line makes sense when you see how Mel is reacting to Book throughout.
Mhm.
But again, I don't think I think Mal is religious.
Oh, I think he's still religious. I
Yes.
think he still believes in God.
Yep. And I honestly think that that is also probably part of the reason why he has Book. Like, I mean, obviously, Book just showed himself being capable,
Hmm.
but I think part of the reason he has Book there is I think he's searching for it still.
Trying to
And
confront himself.
yeah, trying to confront himself and, um, even having Book there, um, not directly uh, preaching, but just having that spiritual support.
Hmm.
I think he needs that, and I don't know if they've necessarily explored that much through the show, other than lines that we've had an RSA and
Hmm.
Book say, right? Um, yeah, just I don't understand what they were doing with Tracy saying that.
Well, I mean, you and I don't agree with the statement of Firefly failed because it was shown out of order. I think that's an
Right.
excuse.
Yeah.
Um, I think one of the reasons why it failed, and it's not a big reason, and I've mentioned this before, I think the episodes were written out of order from the way that they were intended to be watched in the episode
Mhm.
order.
Yeah.
I suspect this episode might have been written before others.
Mm.
Um, and it's entirely possible. I don't know, maybe it's just projection, but I don't think that that's that Bible thumper comment is small enough for it to be passed over by like the pedigree of writers
Yeah.
that have been here. I mean, sure, we got a situation where there's praying mantis eggs in the basement that we never mention again, but this is very particular. This would be closer to um, freaking Wesley all of a sudden never having been a freaking
Watcher.
watcher, and he was always a rogue demon hunter.
Yes, that's exactly it, right? Like the eggs in the basement is this was very much just a creature of the week and
Yeah.
right. But this is such a character thing and it's something that's been again like most of the show subtly explored throughout. Right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not slapping you in the face, but it's definitely there. Right? Like it's even like Mal's response to it. I could have seen there being a little bit more emphasis that, even though he isn't outwardly facing religious, but there still has some sort of belief in it
Mm-hmm.
or something there, right? Because there's a big difference between believing in God and believing in the dogma,
Mm-hmm.
right?
What's the thing?
And
When it comes to Mel, I don't think he believes in the dogma. I think he believes in God.
yeah,
Um, he just happens to be in the world's longest crisis of faith since uh, Dracula. I mean Judas. Dracula 2000, best movie ever.
oh, you just like the bad vampire movies. That one and Queen of the Damned, best movies ever.
Best movies ever. There was a Steven Seagal movie, right? Have you?
Probably.
I think you watched this with me.
Oh,
Steven Seagal fighting vampires with the samurai sword.
oh, yep. I remember this.
Give me a second. Uh,
Oh,
Steven Seagal vampire. Oh no, this says plural. Oh, against the dark. Vampires have emerged from the shadows to take over the world, uh, decimating the human population as a handful of survivors seek shelter in an
Oh,
abandoned hospital. A sword wielding warrior and his team of vigilante former soldiers step forward to protect the humans against their bloodthirsty foes.
yeah.
Best movie ever.
Oh, yeah.
So you've successfully you've successfully changed my mind from this is a passable episode to this was a bad episode.
Yeah.
Um, I still like it. I still like it more than some other episodes, and I think it's the emotion of it because
Mhm.
that is the one thing that they did carry over well.
Yes. Yeah, and that's again, that's why I say it's like filler episode is kind of the best way I can put it. It's like there was some kind of character things that were there if you
Mm.
were looking for it, but it just didn't have focus. And there's some little things I could see. Like I could see some little changes in the episode that could have given it more impact.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say, for example, there was some connection between the organs and the guys with the hands of blue,
Mm.
or have Simon actively tried to do something against Tracy when he had Kaylee.
Mm.
Like just little things like that, because we know Simon has the balls, and I think that would have gone. That would have been a nice bookend to him flubbing it so hard in the stinger, like in the pre-credits scenes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not saying he had to be successful, just something.
I do.
Um,
I do agree with one of that being a method
mhm.
to make it a better episode. I do like the fact that instead of it being about Kaylee and Simon, they did as focused as this episode was. Um, they did leave it just about Kaylee.
Yeah,
Like I've criticized this show a lot about mostly when it comes to like everything just being about characters' relationships to Mal.
yeah,
Um, so for them to have something unique and specific to just Kaylee is a bonus point in my head.
yeah,
But because it was unfocused, I think your idea would bring focus and therefore be good.
yeah. Yeah, not saying it's the right decision, but yeah, it would have just given focus, uh, because it's really what the episode was lacking. Um, I just didn't feel like there was any lasting consequences on how the world was or anything like that. And you throw that in direct contrast to again the blue hand guys, Niska, Badger, Saffron, like most of the even patients from the first episodes, like they felt like they were going to be characters that were going to come around again.
Mm-hmm.
This captain, commander, whatever, just did not say that to me in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm still struggling to figure out what the primary storyline should have been.
Hmm.
The one that they're relating everything off of, right?
Yeah,
Um, for instance, in Shindig, it was the jerk face and Aran Mel
yeah,
and their relationships, and then the like mirrored on the other relationships and things going on within the episode, right? And
hmm,
there wasn't really anything of that nature in this.
yeah,
Um, so I'm thinking if they wanted to tidy this up, unfortunately that does mean taking out some of the smaller moments with other characters and maybe not even having present Zoe and Mal in the entire middle of the episode.
hmm,
So you have their reaction, that emotional part, and then the ending. But any interaction of Zoe Mel in the middle third of the episode should have been from the past.
yes,
And then when it cuts to the future, its interaction of the other characters on the ship, but specifically not Zoe Mal. It might have been. They probably should have cut out the whole ship chase and kept it at like ship in a bottle on the station, to the dry dock, keep everything there. You can reuse the same hallway with different lighting a million times, right?
Yeah.
Just to free up that space.
You know, this is another place where they could have freed up some space is honestly, keep the organ harvesting, the organ smuggling bit there.
Mm.
But I don't know, don't have him come back alive? Like, I just found it didn't add anything. Like, okay, so I guess the only thing it kind of added, and that's in air quotes because again, there was nothing in any way out of character for how Mal and Zoe were acting. Right? Just the idea of, yep, we're going to go topside. We're going to go and have the discussion. Sure, we didn't get the whole plan, but it doesn't surprise me that, no, their plan was, no, we're calling him out on his bullshit.
Yeah.
And, scaring him off that way. Like, I don't care that wasn't explained, but you could have had all of that. We could have had a bit more of the reminiscing around it, around what he was like. Have a flashback to the guy with the walrus mustache glued on, right? Just show those types of interactions instead. And just not have him.
Literally, like, the way to fix the filler episode is to make it a flashback episode.
Yes, I think so.
Right. So through talking to you, you've actually enlightened me to the primary failure of this episode.
Yeah.
It's that the character of Tracy isn't viable.
No.
I bought War Tracy scared and doesn't know what he's doing, so he's just eating his beans. Like, that made sense to me.
Yeah.
But everything after that, I just didn't buy. Like, bumbling know nothing. I bought him as a bumbling know nothing soldier.
Yeah.
I did not buy him as a weaselly do anything to anyone. Con man.
And he was such an idiot. Like, Mal was right when he just called him straight up stupid. Because, okay, you're smuggling these organs. You need to get them to where they're going so you get your organs back. I'm pretty sure they have some good collateral that you running off to sell the organs to someone else is not going to turn out well for you.
Oh, I don't think he's that dumb. I think that's just bad writing.
But it was no, he had to have been that dumb. I have to go that way because one, he's made so many stupid decisions in this already.
Yeah.
That honestly just feels like another stupid decision he would make.
Yeah.
Because, like, what are you expecting? You literally know that they have your organs and you want to get them back.
True.
It's sure, I guess it could be bad writing, but I don't know. With the list of other stupid things he's done, it's like, no, I could honestly go and like, oh yeah, no, this is going to be my payday.
So yeah, we've come to the conclusion the primary failure is that Tracy is the worst.
He really was. But that hat, top tier.
Makes him look dashing, don't you think?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Expected Gene to shoot the Alliance guy right off the bat. It's like the hat when he said the hat makes you look stupid. Oh. Yep.
It's weird that they put that in though. I mean, you didn't even need that to express that, like, it's a silly hat and the crew's not, like, teasing him about it.
That was the... I almost wonder if that was said there to make it painfully obvious that the crew was actively not teasing him about it.
Well, that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah,
you didn't need that to. Yeah.
yeah. But sometimes people be dumb. Yeah.
Obs.
Um,
Do you have anything else you observed in this episode you'd like to discuss?
No, I think we actually I guess there was a little bit of minor world building that we saw that I think helps make the episode Serenity um and what Mal and Zoe have fought through become more impressive.
Mm.
Just showing how, like, even outside of Serenity Valley, when they were in a completely different engagement zone, um, the Browncoats were severely undergunned, and it sounds like they put up a good fight. So it was just some little minor world building that I thought was good to see. Not sure what will or would come from that, but I like those little subtle moments.
Well, they're definitely showing that the brown coats were the defending army and were using entrenched guerrilla warfare tactics.
Yeah.
It's implied to me here. I guess it was expressly indicated before, but it is heavily implied in addition here that the Allies were the invading forces.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, just clearly shown again, they were severely undergunned. We see the tech that they had, and they didn't have anything like that. They were literally relying on, the balls of steel that Mal has, and Zoe being, that stealthy huntress. Is that guerrilla tactics? Like that's what they were relying on completely. You see that when they basically like roll in a tank on top of them, and like those tracker grenades and. Like, yeah, that was probably the only other point that we haven't covered that I had noted.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, then, Fiend.
Yeah, Fiend indeed. Okay. Thanks again for huddling around the second wall with us here tonight. Join us next time as we continue our discussion of Firefly. Please join the conversation in the comments, on social media, or at our Discord, where we would love to get your thoughts. And of course, if you like what we do, please share us with your friends.